So the next subtopic is the factors of production. If you click, if you will land on to this exact slide, the factors of production. Before we discuss the factors of production, we need to know something about production. We need to know something about exchange, consumption. So what are the topics covered within this subunit? You need to define what is land, what is labor, what is capital and enterprise. Examples of nature of each factor of production. Nature of land, nature of labor, capital and enterprise, and the influence on the mobility of the various factors. Land, labor, capital and enterprise, they can be switched from one use to another. What are the factors that influence the mobility? And finally, the causes of changes in the quantity and quality of various factors of production. So these are the topics in your subunit that you need to, in fact, they are learning outcome statements that you need to be quite well versed in, so that you can answer any question asked from this area. Define land, labor, capital. You need to give example of these 4 factors of production, and you need to describe some influences that determine the mobility of land, labor, capital and enterprise, how we can use these factors of production from one use to another, using these land, labor, capital in productive activity A, maybe in a steel mill, and how we can use these factors of production in another productive activity, how we can make them move from one usage to another, and what causes the changes in quantity of these factors of production, quantity of land, labor and capital, and quality of land, labor and capital. So you need to be very clear on what the examiner is looking for, what is the learning outcome statement. So this is described right here. So let us first discuss production, consumption and exchange. Production. Production is the process of combining various inputs. I'm sure as an accounting student you know, materials, labor, overheads go into producing some good or service. So production is a process of combining various inputs in order to make something for consumption. And by the way, what is consumption? Consumption is the usage of goods and services by households. So production is the act of producing something, taking in inputs and producing something, some good or service, and consumption is usage of those goods and services by the household. Makes sense? Production involves, as I told you, I have used the word services also. So production involves the creation of goods, what you see around, and services by using limited resources. So production is an act of combining various inputs to provide some goods and services. And of course, we always will be facing the problem of scarcity. We have limited resources and we have to use those limited resources to produce some goods and wants so as we can satisfy some wants of the consumers. And consumers use these goods and services in the act of consumption. And finally, the exchange. Producer produces goods and services. Like I am providing a service, I am a producer. You all people are consumers. So I'm producer, you are consumer. What I'm doing is production, what you are doing is consumption. And we are not doing it for free. Both parties, the producers and consumers, they must exchange something. What I am giving you is my service, right? And what I'm getting in return is some compensation for my service, right? So producer produces goods and services, consumer consumes, and they exchange the goods and services in reward for something. Like my services are for a certain amount of money, right? So production and consumption are exchanged for something. This is how the economic system works. Moving on, what is the main topic here? 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital and enterprise. So let us discuss them one by one. First we have land. Factors of production, these are the resources. I'm sure you have studied in your basic elementary economics. Factors of production are productive resources used to produce goods and services. They can be categorized into land, labor, capital and enterprise. So factor of production can be grouped into 4 categories. Let us discuss them one by one. When we say land, land is a factor of production, means we use land in producing some good or service. Land means the gifts of the nature, natural endowments, the gifts of nature that we use to produce goods and services. Collectively they are called land. All the things we call natural resources come from the air, water or earth. Minerals that we extract from earth's surface is land. Fish that we catch from oceans or rivers is land. Agri products, land. Water is considered land. So land basically is a simple, it combines all the natural resources. Water, air, minerals, etc. So these resources can be broadly categorized into 2 types. Those that are renewable and those that are non-renewable. Like water is renewable, like water cycle, it renews every year through water cycle. I'm sure you would have studied this in your elementary studies. Air is renewable. What is non-renewable is that once it is consumed, it's gone. Coal, if you use excessively, the resource will be consumed and there won't be more left. Oil, yes, natural oil, petroleum, it is limited in supply. Once it's consumed, it won't be renewed. It's gone. What we use here in our part of the world, natural gas, it has maybe 20 years life. After that, it will be over. No more gas. So these resources, natural resources, they are natural resources, but they are limited in supply. Once they are consumed, they are gone. They won't be refilled. They won't be renewed. Right? So such resources, which will be over sooner or later, are called non-renewable natural resources. And those that are refilled by the nature itself are called renewable, like through water cycle. All right. Land means natural resources, natural supplies of raw materials necessary to make things. So these raw materials are called natural resources. Agree? Like, let's take an example. For example, if you want to make chicken noodle soup. So this chicken noodle soup, of course, it's a act of production. It contains chicken meat. It contains spices. It contains water and vegetable. Spices, they have come from nature. Vegetables, they have come from nature. So all these are natural resources we use in an act of production. Next is labor. This is the second factor of production. Labor means people's effort, human effort. Human effort can be physical, it can be mental. Physical effort is exerted by those who are involved in construction business. They are putting their physical effort, manual labor in the production or in the construction business. What I am doing right now is an act of labor as well. I am giving my mental efforts to you. So if you are exerting physically, it's called the physical labor. What I am doing right now is using my mental capabilities to produce a good or service. So what I am giving here is a mental effort. So an effort can be physical or mental. So this is the second factor of production called labor. So human effort used in producing goods or services is called labor. And as we have discussed, labor can be physical, like in the construction business, and labor can be mental, like what I'm doing right now. Makes sense? Fine. So far, so good. Next, we have a very important factor of production. It's called capital. Capital means man-made resources. They are used to produce further goods and services. So capital means equipment that will be needed to create product or service. Like what I'm using right now computer, internet connectivity, and all these tools that are in front of me, they are capital. They are man-made, right? So capital are equipments that people will use to produce or create goods or services. Capital can be of three types. One, physical capital, tools, machines, factories, buildings, they are called physical capital. Next is financial capital. Again, what are capital? Man-made resources. So financial capital means funds, the money firm will use to buy physical capital. So financial capitals are funds or injections into the business that are used in acquiring physical capital. And next is human capital. Human capital is what knowledge, skills, education and experience will your employee need to have in order to produce your product or service. Like computer technician, chemist, seamstress. This is human capital. Acquired skill, learned skill for doing a particular good or service. So capital means equipments and people you will need to create your product. All right. Moving on. Last but not the least, enterprise. Entrepreneur, the owner. Enterprise means the human effort that combines the above three factors of production and make them use in a productive way. So human resource, enterprise is a human resource that organizes these three factors of production, land, labor and capital, to produce some goods and services. So enterprise or entrepreneur is the owner, the human effort or human resource that organizes and combines these factors of productions. So this enterprise or entrepreneurship, this is something very difficult to describe and measure. But we can easily recognize if an entrepreneur is successful or not. If his business is doing well, we'll say the enterprise is doing well. The entrepreneur is brilliant. He's a brilliant entrepreneur because his business is financially successful. For example, Bill Gates, he's an entrepreneur. Michael Dell, the owner of Dell Computers, entrepreneur. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, entrepreneur. Elon Musk, entrepreneur. So entrepreneur, human resource that organizes these three factors of production to produce goods and services. So it's difficult to define it. So making these three factors of production, above three, into something useful. Of course, it requires some creative skill, it also involves some risk. So this is basically the job of entrepreneurship. This is the factor of production that ties these three together to produce some goods and services. Now, although your learning outcome statement doesn't require the factors of production and what are the rewards of the factors of production, so you need to know that every factor of production has some cost. Nothing in the world is for free. There is no free lunch. Land, a natural resource, requires some reward for its services. The reward for land is rent, rental income to the owners of the land. Labor, of course, every labor works for some reward. So the reward for labor are wages and salaries. Wages and salaries. Capital. As I told you, capital means man-made resources, can be of three types we discussed. Human capital, physical capital. So they need some reward for themselves as well. So for them, the reward is interest, dividends. If you have acquired some funds from the ordinary people, as ordinary shareholders, you have to reward them in the form of dividends. So capital, for capital, the reward is interest, if it is borrowed funds from the company, from the bank, or it could be dividend. And finally, the entrepreneur, the enterprise who has combined these factors of production, for them, the rewards are profits. All right, makes sense. Now, the next point is factors of production: mobility, quality, and quantity. A little bit about them, and then the lecture would be over. Mobility means that your factors of production, land, labor, and capital, they can be moved from one use to another. So mobility means the factors of production, land, labor, and capital, they can be moved out of one production process into another. Factor mobility may involve the movement of factors between a firm A, where you have used your land, labor, and capital. You can switch the usage to another firm B, right? So mobility means using your factors of production from one use, one production process to another. A worker leaves one company and goes to another, factor mobility. We had a piece of land. First it was used for agri purposes. Now we have constructed a plaza. It's a factor mobility. Entrepreneur, first he was running a poultry farm. Now he has invested into retailing business. Factor mobility. So means moving, utilizing your factors of production from one productive process to another is called factor mobility, right? Quality. The quality of your factors of production depends upon training. Quality and quantity of your factors of production, these two combined, they depend upon the discovery of some new natural resources. The quantity of your land will go up. Training of labor, the quality of your labor goes up. Population growth rate, the quantity of your labor goes up. Improvement in technology, the quality of your production goes up. Better means of producing goods and services, quality and quantity can go. So technology, training, discovery of natural resources, better means of producing goods and services, they can change the quality and quantity of your factors of production. So that completely covers what is needed as per your syllabus learning outcome statement. Now we have some questions. Okay, the question is, a boat owner employs a crew to catch fish to sell on the market. So which factors of production are involved in this activity? So let us just first discuss the first line. When you say a boat, it's a capital resource. Why? Because boat is a man-made resource. We made it, human beings, that's why it's capital. Man-made resources are called capital. A boat owner, who is owner? He is the entrepreneur representing enterprise. We have got the second factors of production. Third, employs a crew. Crew, people, human effort. That means labor. And the fourth factor of production is fish, which is a natural resource, land. So interestingly, in the single question, we have capital, we have entrepreneur, we have labor, we have land. So interestingly, all four factors of production are involved. Land, labor, capital, and enterprise. So that makes D to be the correct option, and D it is, as you can see. Next. What is not a factor of production? Amongst these four, which of these is not a factor of production? Unskilled workers represent labor. Raw material is land. Machinery is a man-made resource, it's capital. Company shares, it's a financial asset. It is not a factor of production. We don't use company shares to make goods or services. So this is not a factor of production, and that's the reason A is the right answer. Next. Nolwazi lived in a rural area in Botswana and made baskets to sell to the tourists. The local government gave her a loan to buy a car to take the basket to the city market. Car. our man-made resources. So which factor of production increased? Car represents capital. So capital has gone up. So guys, that ends your area, the factor of production. We have discussed the theory in detail as well as some questions to reinforce your understanding. I'll see you in the next session. Till then, take care. Good luck with your efforts.